Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. I have some bad news for you. Some news that maybe we should have covered back in October. And while I talk about media trust all the time, I want to give it to you straight. It's never been lower. Record low media trust, sitting at 28% if you include the independents, the Republicans, and the Democrats. If you add in everybody else, I doubt it rises much. And if you happen to be a Republican, the confidence in mass media reporting news has dropped to 8%. That doesn't mean a lot of people don't trust the news. It means that the vast majority of people, 3/4 of this country, don't trust mainstream news. Why do you think CBS News is changing their direction? Why do you think people go to YouTube and the Green Machine and other outlets to get their news? Why are they listening to me every day, Monday through Friday, at the 6 Minute Daily for their news? It's because it's reliable, it's likely accurate, and at least it calls out the BS when it's there. There's a lot of accountability when it's done by somebody who you can communicate with. And that's one of the biggest problems mainstream has. But there are others, and we're definitely going to talk about them in the following videos. So stick around. You're going to want to stay to the end. These numbers get really disturbing. Here we go. Now, before we get started, just a quick reminder. I am trying to get to 50K, which means double check you're still subscribed to the channel. If you look down there at the little button and it's red and it says subscribe, click it right now. And then hit the little bell icon and turn on all notifications. And since you're down there anyway, hit the thumbs up button. Early interaction like that will help this video and help the channel overall. And if you happen to be one of the members of the channel, you get to see this video first, most likely, several hours before it goes live the following day. But as far as this is considered, media trust in the U.S. has fallen to critical lows. And when I say critical, it's not hyperbole. It's actually the truth. And it's disturbing. And it should be. Let's take a look at the story coming to us from Gallup, along with YouGov, who ran these numbers, and even I consider neither of them trustworthy. Washington, D.C. Americans' confidence in mass media has edged down to a new low, with just 28% expressing a great deal or fair amount of trust in newspapers, television, and radio to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly. This is scaled down from last year, which was at 31%, and 5 years ago, which was 40%. And mind you, that's when I started reporting on it. In 2020, the trust in news fell at a catastrophic rate, likely because of the lies and some of the things that were being forced down Americans' throats by the media, which we knew were untrue and eventually found were untrue. So why would anybody have faith in them now? It's a good question, and it seems to have eroded even further. Meanwhile, 7 in 10 U.S. adults now say they have not very much confidence, 36%, or none at all, 34%. So it's higher than even the numbers being reported here, because they're playing with the numbers. America's trust in mass media, looked at as a chart, well, between 1972, 2 years after I was born, to 2025, which is why Gen X is perhaps most accountable generation, are holding other people accountable. When you take a look at the great deal crowd, they're dropping like a rock. When you take a look at none at all, yeah, that seems to be a big problem, a number that's rising. And look, nobody is really enjoying what they're being told, nor do they think it's reliable. When Gallup began measuring trust in the news media in the 1970s, between 68 and 72% of Americans expressed some confidence in reporting, which, made sense. You were coming off of Edward R. Murrow and perhaps Walter Cronkite, although we found out later that he was less unbiased than we could ever possibly have imagined. However, by the next reading in 1997, public confidence had fallen to 53%. Media trust remained just above 50% until it dropped to 44% back in 2004. And if you think about that era, that also makes a lot of sense. The highest reading in the past decade was 45% in 2018, which came just 2 years after confidence had collapsed amid the divisive 2016 presidential campaign because, well, the fix was in, except it didn't work out that way. And the person they were saying was going to be president wasn't, which meant everybody knew that the gig was up. And it got worse from there. When you start to take a look at how these numbers work out, especially in accordance with political races every 2 years, it continues to fall because the information that we're given on a day-to-day basis is unreliable. Polling is unreliable, and those polls are fixed to give a candidate a distinct advantage or a disadvantage, and we can read into that if we just happen to know what the questions were. You get push-pull polling, and you get a lot of other tricks that are utilized to change the conversation or the narrative, as they say these days. And anytime you see the word narrative done by a news organization, it means they're not telling you the whole story. They're telling you the version that they're approved to tell you, or they think you're privileged enough to hear. That's a problem. In the latest 28% confidence reading from September 2nd to 16 poll marks the first time the measure has fallen below 30%. And to me, that's unsurprising. Media trust at record lows among all party groups. That's right. Politically, it's a nonpartisan non-belief, if you ask me, and a lot of other reasons for that as well. We'll get into them, and this story does as well. Although Democrats and Republicans continue to express different levels of trust in the news media, the percentages with high confidence in reporting are at low points among all party groups. Republicans' confidence, which hasn't risen above 21% since 2015, because again, they've been lied to, has dropped to single digits, 8%. Guess what? That's about where I fall, maybe even less. I would say if somebody were to try to figure out what people like me were thinking, it's that you have nothing reliable to say and I will never listen to you again. That's why people get their news from Tucker Carlson, or they pull opinions from Joe Rogan, or they actually look at the news stories from people who are qualified to speak about them, most likely an attorney like Megyn Kelly. The numbers don't go up when you take a look at what's being fabricated on the other side, and especially from network news talk shows like The View, which are essentially just a partisan regurgitation machine that doesn't spit out something productive. It's something rather destructive. Independence trust has not reached the majority level since 2003, and the latest 27% reading matches last year's historical low. In other words, they haven't improved much. Now, Democrats, the narrowest of majorities at 51%, now express trust in the media, which is a repeat of the low previously seen in 2016. In other words, this isn't good, and it's not changing anytime soon. And for some inexplicable reason, and somebody please try to explain it in the comments section below, there is clear generational divide in media trust. Older adults seem to trust the media more, except in my generation, which I still think I'm in the majority opinion, we don't trust media at all. An analysis of the 3-year aggregated data to increase sample sizes in the most recent 3-year period spanning from 2023 to 2025, 43% of adults age 65 or older can still be influenced by the likes of CNN and PMS Now and other similarly compromised news groups. That's compared with no more than 28% of any younger age group, which is baffling to me because the results, especially in the financial area, has been so poor. And while they seem to have the most amount of money, perhaps they have a fewer amount of cares, or they feel safe. Democrats, of course, of all ages, express more trust than Republicans in the mass media. In combined 2023 to 2025 data, 68% of Democrats age 18 to 29 and 42% of those aged 30 to 49 express trust in the media, compared to 59% of Democrats that are 50 or older, 69% of those aged 65 and older. In other words, it's the old people, and if it weren't for them, nobody would be watching the mainstream news. And that's the divide. When you take a look at the older age groups, again, it comes down to trust because of comfort, not necessarily because they believe with 100% uncertainty that they're trustworthy. At least that's how I'm reading the data. Let me know how you read it in the comments section below. Finally, let's take a look at this chart because I think it'll tell us a great deal. Republicans here in red are looking at a great deal or fair amount of trust. In the 18 to 29, it's 12%. In the 30 to 49, it's 6%, probably where I fall. In the 50 to 64%, it's 8%. That's the overall assumption because of Gen X's size spanning 15 years, where I think you're going to see this number continue to crawl downward. Anybody 65 or older, even on the right, is thinking that news is pretty compromised. Independents, obviously, 29% at 18 to 29, 24% at 30 to 49, 50 to 64 gets you 23%, and at 65 plus, you have too much optimism at 42. And finally, Democrats. Democrats still hold the news in high regard, despite the fact that, well, they've been proven multiple times to be lying to them. 38% in the 18 to 29, 30 to 49-year-old age group is 42%. From 50 to 64 is 59. And then at 65 is just, I don't know, delusion? At the end of the day, and as long as I've been covering this, going on 6 years now, none of these numbers have jumped up with any appreciable difference. They've only gone down. And the people that are delusional are going to just remain there and continue to watch the same kinds of covers they've been seeing. But audiences are adapting, and technology has allowed for that to happen. As I pointed out earlier, streaming elements, YouTube, TikTok, Instaface, Bookgram, whatever it is that you use, and I know a lot of those are made up funny platforms. I'm just saying most people are looking there to get informed information that they can somewhat rely on, at least from somebody that they expect to do a good job of telling them the truth, because it certainly isn't the mainstream media. Anyway, those are my thoughts on what Americans believe in the United States and whether or not they believe the news media. What are yours? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. If you've already written several answers down there, I appreciate it. If you just write hi, I would appreciate that as well. But take this opportunity just to confirm you give me your thoughts so I have something to work from. On that note, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. But probably not watching mainstream news.